Hello and welcome to this week's College Planning Tip of the Week. I'm Nancy Steenson with Steenson College Coaching, and with me as always is Jack Wang. So Jack, given that a lot of people don't necessarily pay sticker price for college, how can a family get a sense of what the average price is that people pay or what they might be expected to pay?
Thanks, Nancy. That's a great question because there is a lot of mystery around how much college actually costs. The news headlines are very scary. College can cost, 80 plus $1,000 a year, and college costs are increasing at whatever percent rate, right? High rate, fairly high rate each year. So it's very scary if you just follow the headline. The reality, however, is far different. Very few families, generally speaking, pay full sticker price. And just because a college costs $85,000 a year, like some of the most expensive colleges cost today, that doesn't necessarily mean that a family has to pay that. So that's sort of the good news. The unfortunate part is that it's hard sometimes to figure out what families will really pay. So I have a couple of tips that I'll share with our audience here. One is that by law, each college has to have something called a net price calculator on their website. Now, and I'll be honest, some schools put it right up front and center. Some schools bury it deep, 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 deep into their website. But by law, it has to be there somewhere. Now, the net price calculator is simply that, right? It calculates what your net price might be. It's a ballpark. And of course, the quality of the calculator can really vary. So in some cases, if a calculator asks you very few questions, then generally the quality isn't as good. It might give you a broader range of price versus a calculator that asks you a ton of questions. In fact, the calculator that asks you a ton of questions is essentially you filling out a financial aid form because it's asking very, very similar questions. So it's a great way to get a preview of what you might ultimately have to fill out on a FAFSA or CSS profile, the schools that use it. Now, the downside of the net price calculator is, as with anything, garbage in, garbage out. And so what I mean by that is the net price calculator and the results are only going to be as good as the information that you give it. And so one of the most confusing parts about financial aid is that on these financial aid forms, sometimes people what the form is asking for and what people think it's asking for are actually two different things, right? Even some seemingly simple questions. So if you put in generally incorrect information, you're going to get an incorrect answer. So another resource are several websites such as College Scorecard or College Navigator, both from the U.S. Department of Education, or a website called niche, niche.com. And so in a lot of cases, families can see what's called the average net price, right? So you might have an $80,000 a year school, but the average net price might be, let's say, $45,000. But it's important for our families to understand what that actually represents. First off, that's the average of families who pay or how much they pay for that college for those families who receive federal financial aid, which is obviously not every family, right? Because some families are wealthier and so they don't receive any aid. But also that net price also is an average based on various income ranges. So the websites I mentioned, College Scorecard is one of my favorites for this, but also College Navigator and Niche, they actually show net income or average net price by income range. So you can see that based on lower income or higher income, you can see what the number is. And sometimes they're substantially different than the published average net price because that's a net income, that's an average of all of the net income ranges. It's another way for families to get an idea of, hey, how much will this college cost for them? And they can use these two tools to kind of piece together a ballpark idea. Hey, is this really going to be a $50,000 a year college or $20,000 a year college, right? But just understand that there are limitations and these are only guidelines, but at least you can get a more realistic answer than just worrying about that the college is $85,000 a year and praying that you don't have to pay.
Jack, that makes a lot of sense in a very confusing landscape. I often say that buying a college education is going to be a less transparent process than buying a car, which is, of course, saying a lot. And I'd love to see the day. I'd love to live to see the day when it's more straightforward. But until that time, all this information that you're sharing is wonderful. And thank you for that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this week on College Planning Tip of the Week. We will see you next time.